I am Rachel Romeliotis. I'm a senior editor with O'Reilly, and we are here to talk about Android. I'm with Chris Neugebauer, Android and Python developer at Secret Lab and director of PyCon Australia.
Yes.
So, first question. Android continues to evolve. Do you think it's headed in the right direction?
Well, yes, certainly. Android after version 2.3 really did start to improve working on usability. First in version 3 for tablets, the Honeycomb release, but definitely with version 4, what they call Ice Cream Sandwich, but I'm not going to refer to it as that because I don't really like the name that much.
Yes.
But you know, they've done a lot of work on having consistent visual design guidelines, guidelines on how to structure your apps, and make it really easy to make your apps look good and behave consistently. Which really wasn't so much the case before version 3. And it's making things really easy as a developer to create good-looking and apps that behave as users expect them to.
Right, great. How about, what is sort of the biggest challenge you find when you're developing an app with Android?
Okay, so the biggest challenge at the moment is really dealing with the devices that are lagging behind the bleeding edge that Google's putting out. Like, still more than 50% of the market at the moment is running 2.3, which as a release, like that came out in late 2010. It's very old now, but you know, people are still using it and people still expect the latest apps on their phone, even if their phone is, well, effectively a year and a half out of date now.
Do you have any idea of how you could get Google to have the phone developers update more often, or is there any way to do that and deal with them?
I mean, I guess it's more about the phone developers themselves seeing incentive in upgrading, and I guess they're a bit fixed in their ways. They've been around for a very long time, and updating operating systems on phones is something that's really a very new idea. Unfortunately, we're very familiar with it on our own computers.
Right,
you know, we get updates all the time, but phone developers just haven't done that.
Right, and so how, as a developer, how do you deal with creating an app when something has maybe Gingerbread or 3.0 or now Jelly Bean is out? So I can't even imagine how you would be able to take the greatest pieces of Jelly Bean and port that back.
Well, the good news is that the biggest changes that hit in version 3 and version 4 have either been provided as backports for developers to really old versions of Android, and if Google hasn't done it, then enterprising developers out there have done it because they see the value in it as well.
Okay.
So the big paradigms that have hit Android recently is this thing called the action bar, which is a way of organizing all the features of your app in a way that makes it easy to find. Developers have gone out and made a compatibility library for that developers can go out and use, and that makes it certainly easier to develop apps that work on version 2.3 and before. Luckily, we don't have to target too much further back than 2.3 anymore. It was looking like people might be using 2.2 for a very long time, but that seems to have died out a bit, which is really good.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, do you think an incentive would be letting the consumer know a little bit more about what great things you could do with Jelly Bean rather than
Gingerbread? I mean, if there were more devices out there with the bleeding edge and stayed attracted to the bleeding edge, then I guess it would sort of get the device manufacturers to get themselves into gear.
Which you might see with the Nexus 7.
Yes, I mean, that will definitely kick the tablet market into gear.
Which is exciting.
I mean, I still have a tablet that I bought in June last year, just before OSCON last year, and that still hasn't updated to 4.0.
Right, and will it?
That's something That's something that the manufacturers of those devices really need to work on. But it is getting better.
That is good to hear. So another question is, with all of these different versions and devices, interface design is kind of all over the place. Different screen sizes, sometimes a keyboard. There's even one now I think I saw with a stylus. How do you deal with that as a developer?
With patience. It's something that you have to deal with. I mean, because people are going to use lots of different size devices. It's a matter of designing user interfaces with the various sizes of screen in mind.
Sure.
So you need to know that I have a phone that's like this. This is a Galaxy Nexus. Its screen is pretty big. I had a much smaller screen on my Nexus 1, which is 2 years ago. You might have to design slightly different layouts for it, but you can do that. But it's a matter of knowing that you have more space or bigger size, and keeping that in mind. Because, usability is definitely a matter of keeping the devices themselves in mind.
And what about this one, and I don't know if this is just a special example, like the stylus. Is that something where those are specialized apps, or is that...
I mean, I haven't seen styluses be used all that much.
Right, no, neither have I.
I guess it's not all that different to using your thumb nowadays.
That's true.
Because they're going to assume that you're navigating with your thumbs instead of with a stylus. So the apps will still work.
Okay. And final question.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think Google could actually help developers sort of keep up with everything that's happening?
Okay, so as a developer of Android apps, I find it really frustrating that it takes me several months to get the latest version of the Android operating system on my phone. I mean, Jelly Bean came out 3 weeks ago, and I haven't been able to get a test device or Jelly Bean onto my own phone in order to test it. And I think getting a look at versions of Android before they get released to the general public could definitely make it easier for me as a developer to keep up with what Google's doing, and perhaps have apps ready for the launch of the new devices rather than just Google having apps.
So do you have any sense of why they're doing that?
I guess it's to keep the operating system under wraps. I mean, because it's an open source release, as soon as they make it available to people, then device manufacturers can go off and do what they want with it. And there's this massive problem around 2.2 and 2.3 where dodgy companies in China were making tablet devices that weren't particularly good, but they can put Android on it because they can get the source code of it.
Okay.
So open source has been an interesting double-edged sword in Android's release cycle.
Well, it'll be interesting to see where it goes from here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.